Hi there. Welcome to today's webinar. I'm Jonathan Westerling, Manager of Special Programs for Google's Spectrum Services team. Today we're focusing on channel guidance, which is a new SAS feature that will help you navigate network interference issues. Many of you already have access to this feature in the trusted tester mode. If you don't, we'll tell you how to get it enabled for your SAS account during this webinar. Here's what we have on our agenda for the next half hour or so. We'll take a look at channel guidance, what it is and when to use it. We'll show you how to configure channel guidance in the SAS Portal, some suggested parameters to use while you're using channel guidance, and also look at two practical examples. One being interference between two CBSDs, and the other when you're adding a new CBSD to your network. Following that, we'll have a moment for Q&A. If you've never used chat on YouTube, we're going to use the chat feature to ask questions during the Q&A. So ask your questions as they come in. We'll answer those questions during the Q&A. The best way well, I should say, if you haven't used the chat feature on YouTube, the first time you do so, it's going to ask you for to create a YouTube identity. It's going to ask you to create a channel. And you just have to type in your name or any name. It's just going to ask you for something to name your channel, and then you'll be able to post questions. Remember also, there is a delay between the time you post a question in the chat and the time that we see it, so we appreciate your understanding with that. But do have your questions ready in the chat if you think of any, or if we miss anything. Also, we'll mention that this video will be replayed after we're live here, so you'll be able to rewatch things at a later date. To present the new channel guidance feature to us today, we're bringing back Martin Jensen. And I'm going to switch to Martin's screen here on our new software. There's Martin. And Martin is a consultant on Google's wireless services team. He's been working closely with some of our customers to use the channel guidance feature already. You might remember Martin because he joined us a few weeks ago to give us some tips on the Part 96 migration. A little bit about Martin. Over the last 5 years, he's been heavily engaged in designing, building out, and supporting WISP and private wireless networks. Prior to this, he spent 17 years with a large telecom OEM vendor, and 7 years before that working on network infrastructure and neutral host providers. Martin is from Denmark. He grew up in a small town in Denmark. We were texting back and forth, and I asked him the name of the town that he grew up in. It's called Horsholm, but the O in Horsholm has a line through it, so it looks like a null set or a fancy zero. This is not something that exists in English. So Martin, how do you actually say Horsholm when the O has a line through it?
Yeah, it's one of 3 extra letters. Thank you, Jonathan. That we have in the Danish alphabet. And the over the line across is a Ø, so the town is called Hørsholm. Okay, in fact, the capital is Copenhagen, but it's called København in Danish. Oh, that also includes an O with a line over it.
It does. Wow. Okay, cool. Yeah. Well, this is about channel guidance, not pronunciation guidance. So, Martin, I'm going to put your screen live here, and we'll let you present your channel guidance presentation for us today and show us how this works.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Jonathan. And I'm excited to present this channel guidance functionality feature. As you mentioned, it has been with a couple of customers for trial. And we gathered a couple of feedback, some of the common questions that we're going to try to cover in this particular session here. And channel guidance is really an important feature when it comes to shared spectrum in general. And we're going to cover why and how and so on and so forth in this particular presentation. So the first question is what is channel guidance and why do we need it? And there's and that's a question that comes in oftentimes. And here's some of the sort of objectives with channel guidance, and also the use that we have seen some of the early testers utilize it for. And obviously the objective with channel guidance is that the spectrum that we're using with CBRS, it is a shared spectrum. Everybody can use it that is want to use it. and can connect to the spectrum access system. And obviously with a shared spectrum, what we need to strive for is having it as clean spectrum as possible. Bear in mind that the SASs know where all the CBSDs are. They know their output power, they know their antennas, they know the incumbents that are around there, so they have the full visibility. You as an operator have visibility to your own network and your own CBSDs, but you don't necessarily know what's going on around it. So this is where the spectrum access system, the Google Spectrum Access System with its channel guidance can become very useful and helpful to optimize and ensure that the spectrum is as clean as it can be with everybody using it. Two common use cases we're going to cover in this session is, and what you will see, it's a common thread amongst the channel guidance, is when something changes in your ecosystem, in the spectrum ecosystem that you're using, that is when channel guidance becomes relevant and an important tool as part of your toolbox. When new CPSDs are deployed for, it could be expansion, could be you adding a carrier, it could be you need to change the azimuth, the tilt, you need to increase the capacity on your network. That is where, when you're putting in a new CPSDs, the first question that comes to mind is, okay, I have 15 channels, 15 10 megahertz channel. Which ones are ideal for this new location for this particular CPSD, considering everything that is around you, not just your own CPSDs, but also other operators, CPSDs and incumbents, and so on and so forth. So that is where it becomes important, and we'll show you a quick demo of how that looks like in the system. The other very common use case, and perhaps the most commonly used use case so far amongst our early users, is to resolve interference issues. Oftentimes there are issues in your network and you don't necessarily always know where they come from. There could be many issues. It could be issues, as you know, with antennas. It could be configuration issues. It could be feeder issues. There's just a bunch of issues. And now you have this shared CBRS spectrum, and with things changing out, there's new PALs coming in. All of a sudden, there's this new factoring that could be playing into the troubleshooting of an issue. And this is where channel guidance again becomes super useful. How do you know that your issue that you have in your network is caused by interference by other users of the SAS spectrum, or is it something else? So channel guidance can give you a very quick view of whether or not your CPSD is experiencing interference in the area that it's transmitting. And we'll again show you how that looks like in the portal, and then how you can utilize this channel guidance to give you a very quick snapshot of whether your CPSD is experiencing interference or if it's something else. That will help you with your troubleshooting. So this particular slide here is the question that came in, probably the most frequent one. So this is important to cover that, and that is resolving the interference. The questions that comes in is how can SAS users determine if the CPSD is experiencing interference in the channels that it's currently using? And very quickly, by looking at the portal and looking at the report from channel guidance, you can quickly see if you're using a good or a bad channel. If it is a good or if it is a bad channel, then the next question that comes in is, how can the user identify a better channel to shift your spectrum allocation to from the CPSD perspective? And this is where in the portal we provide an on-the-fly channel guidance to use, so that you can readjust your spectrum use on your CPSD on better and cleaner channels that are surrounding your CPSD. The other thing we want to cover here is a typical question is what is channel guidance based on? So a misconceived understanding is that the channel guidance is based on information coming from the network. That is not the case. The channel guidance is based on a prediction model, is based on all the knowledge we have about the network, about the area that you're in. And specifically these 4 details here goes into creating that prediction model that goes into our channel guidance algorithms. Obviously, we've taken advantage of the superb geodata that we have at Google to understand how does the morphology look like that these CPSDs are deployed into, so we can determine the CPRS channel propagation. We also have obviously an awesome propagation engine that can determine where those signal transmits and which power and how they get attenuated within the high resolution clutter that we have. The two other factors obviously we take into consideration is and very importantly, the CPSD details of the CPRS or CPSDs that are in the area surrounding your network and your CPSDs. Obviously, the SASs, they know everything about all the CPSDs that are in your area and how they transmit, its height, etc. And that is obviously what we need to consider when we create a prediction and when you determine which channels are best to use. And of course, your own network. Where are you transmitting? How are you transmitting? The antennas that you're using, the gains, etc., etc. So all of these data point goes into the channel guidance algorithms that creates the final output. One thing I forgot to mention at the very beginning, you heard us previously talk about coexistence. Coexistence is channel guidance. And we found that coexistence, the term coexistence that's mentioned in the specifications, sometimes can be a little misunderstood, and the word of channel guidance is a more appropriate naming convention for this feature. So when you in the past heard channel coexistence, that is in fact what we're calling channel guidance today. So the next thing that comes in, so this is all good and dandy. Then the next thing is how can I see my channel guidance for my network? And this is available in the SAS portal. What you will see in the SAS portal when you click your CPSDs, you're familiar with the configuration and the status view that comes up on your right-hand side. What you will see now is in fact two different tabs. The one we're covering today is the coexistence tab, so the channel guidance tab. This is where you see all the different parameters that's pertinent for channel guidance. You will see two new parameters that is being introduced. I believe we covered them very briefly in the last seminar, and we're going to cover them in more detail in this one. You see the grants, the spectrum availability, the channel quality, and also now the channel ranking. And this is, we're going to go into that in the next couple of slides. You also see the history tab. We're not going to cover that in this seminar, but that's another very nice addition to the SAS portal, where you can see history for your grants for your individual CPSDs. So what's in the coex tab and what do they mean and how do you configure them? So we've broken the coex tab up into two slides just to illustrate the details that's in the coex tab. The new parameters that you will see introduced for coexistence or for channel guidance is, we previously called them CCG. It was again a term that was for common channel group. Now it's a better word for it, we believe, is same frequency group. We're going to cover that in detail, and we have some tricks on how to set those up and which parameters to use in your network that probably makes sense. And then we also have ICG, or a better term for it is frequency reuse group. That is the parameters that you'll see for every single CPSDs that is configured in your network. We also have obviously the spectrum grant. If your CPSD has an existing grant, we're showing that in the same view, so you can get an overview of where you're transmitting at the moment. This particular CPSD is transmitting in the last two channels of the CPRS spectrum, in channel 14 and channel 15. And then also you're familiar with the spectrum availability, a quick snapshot of what transmit power can you transmit, or what is the power that you can transmit at the different channels in and around your CPSDs, what channels are available for you to use. Perhaps the more interesting one is the channel quality. So the channel quality composed of two input. It's the output power that is available compared to what you desire your CPSD to transmit at, and then also the interference from both your own network and also from other networks in the vicinity. What you see there is simply a channel ranking based on every single channel that's in in the CBRS spectrum. Underneath, you see the channel ranking. So what we do now is we basically rank all of these channels based on which one is best for your particular CBSD. And what has also changed was when your CBSD is running a spectrum inquiry, whereas before we did not have a sorting in the response to a spectrum inquiry. Now, when your CBSD is sending a spectrum inquiry, the channels that we provide is ranked based on the best channels first. So it becomes easier for your CBSD to request the top shelf of your channels. What you see here is a little green dot where it says CCG. Where this becomes important is obviously your base stations, your CPEs that are connected to your base stations need to know, need to have sort of a way to measure or a way to know which base station should you be connected to. And this is where the CPE or the CCG parameter becomes available. This is basically your linkage between your base station and your CPE. So for CPEs, you will see these little green dots of obviously the channels that you should connect to need to be equivalent to the channels that your base station is using. So I'm going to show you how that looks like in Portal. There was a lot of slides. I'm going to quickly show you how that looks like in the Portal today. I'm going to switch over to a network that we have set up for this demonstration purpose. Clicked on a CBSD. This is currently somewhere in Austin, I believe. And what you see over here is the standard tabs. You are familiar with the config tab, the status tab of what it's using, and then also the coax tab that we just presented. You see the spectrum availability tab. This particular one has the ability to transmit at full power in all of the different frequency channels that's available. However, if you look at the channel quality, you see there's some channels that are not as good as others, probably because there are some CBSDs in the area that obviously from a SAS user perspective, you might not have visibility to, but from a SAS perspective, we can calculate the optimal frequency use and optimal frequency selection for your CBSD and report it. And what you'll see here is the channel ranking on this site here. When you click down, you can see the calculated channel quality, as well as the power today and the power tomorrow that we covered previously. We will also see the channel ranking here. You'll see channel 5, 6, 7, 8. They are not listed until the very bottom because they are lower in priority from a channel quality perspective. So this is where you very quickly can see your channel quality. If I click this button here, I can see some other CBSDs. Now, the other important thing is you see none of these are registered at the moment. This is a demo system, but you still see the channel quality for your CBSDs. Where this becomes important is for this other aspect that we covered early on, which is for new CBSDs, deploying a new CBSDs, you don't necessarily know which channel should you use, which channel is best for new CBSDs. So you can simply deploy these CBSDs in the portal without even registering them, and then find out which channel makes most sense, which channel is cleanest for your specific deployment for that CBSDs in the area that it's located. You can also quickly catch, I can click on another one, this one, and you will see what it does, the system does. It quickly calculates what's the channel quality for this particular CBSD. Now this one was lucky, there's no interference issue in this particular location, but you see how quickly you calculate these, and this is a super helpful tool for new deployments or making any changes to your network. You can quickly go in and see which channel makes most sense for that your specific deployment. So back to the slides. So I mentioned that we wanted to cover a little bit on what does these parameters mean. There's these two new parameters that have changed names a couple of times, but we believe the most sensible names is frequency reuse group, and it's the same frequency group. So frequency reuse group is a parameters that the coax and the channel guidance algorithm requires for knowing which CPE should connect to which base station. You might have issues that you might have a configuration where you want to ensure that your specific CPE connects to a specific base station sector. In the past, we have used things such as PCI lock, and I typically try and compare that to a PCI lock mechanism. Consequently, for identifying a good number, so the frequency reuse parameter can be an arbitrary number, an arbitrary name or number that makes sense for your deployment. A typical and a good recommendation that we typically recommend is utilize the CPI information you have in your LTE network to utilize that parameter, that number, for your frequency reuse parameter value. And that will basically instruct the channel guidance algorithm to understand that these two base station and CP belongs together. The same frequency group is basically a frequency allocation that you can reuse amongst others. So you know that some deployments have a reuse pattern, and think of the frequency same frequency group as your frequencies that can be reused in multiple base stations without interfering with each other. If you provide those parameters to the SAS algorithm, that will help the SAS algorithm to provide an even better channel guidance result. And this might seem daunting at first, but we have developed some methods to derive these information from your network, and you will see in the next slide here how we populate those. So initially, when your deployment is up and running, you see it in the SAS portal. Those same frequency group parameters and frequency use group parameters is initially empty, and it can seem daunting at first just to start to populate every single CBSD that's in the field. So we pre-populate those by calculating the different values. So the same frequency group, we do calculate that in our algorithm based on a best server method that we have, and then we pre-populate the CCG information for all your CBSDs. Same thing, we know what frequencies you're using in your network today, and by using those information, we can pre-populate your frequency reuse group. So that's what you will see in your portal, and that's what we use to initially calculate the channel guidance values and parameters for utilizing the best spectrum. The other way, I don't believe there's any CBSDs at the moment, that another option, the CBSDs itself, you can pre-program, or the intent is that you can pre-program these values, the same frequency group value and frequency reuse group value. You can pre-program those in the CPE itself and in the base station itself, and they will populate these values in the parameter in the SAS portal. Now, this is calculated from a SAS perspective, and you might have a different. There might be something in your network that says, well, this doesn't. It shouldn't be configured this way. I have a desire to have some CPEs connected to another base station, perhaps from a capacity perspective. Perhaps there is some obstructions in your area that the SAS is not aware of, and you might have a different opinion of what those values should be. And this is where you, as a SAS user, if you can overwrite these values, and as soon as you overwrite them, of course, the pre-populated values from derived from the Google SAS will be overridden and will not be populating those values anymore if you decide to overwrite them. So your input obviously will take precedence over anything that is pre-populated by the Google SAS. We talked briefly about two use cases. So one is the deployment of a new CBSD. So we created this quick how-to guide on how that is used based on the inputs that we received from the early users. So the way it can be done, and there's many other ways that your preference might be different, but here is a way that we have seen. So when you have a network plan or a deployment or a plan of record, I believe some of you call it, is you can pre-populate that in the SAS portal. including also your spectrum management group. So you have sort of an idea in the next quarter or two, these are the CPSDs that I will be deploying. You pre-populate those into the portal. You create them in the portal. And what happens is the algorithms calculates on a frequent basis, calculates if you're putting in your CPSD here, this will be a clean spectrum to use for your CPSD. So what is a good practice is to pre-populate, to create your CPSDs in the portal as soon as you have your plan of record ready, because what happens is that your CPSDs will be taken into consideration when the channel guidance algorithms are run. And clearly those are not run all the time instantaneously, so you might have to wait up to 4 hours until you see the result of the channel guidance. So once you get closer to your actual deployment of those CPSDs, you go into the SAS portal and you look at that screen that says these are the cleanest channels to use for your CPSDs. That is what you typically program in your CPSD just before you bring it live. And then your CPSDs, when you turn it on, it will send in the registration request, and the SAS portal will grant those channels that you have required. So this is a way to identifying the best channels as soon as you possibly know that you're having a new CPSD deployed prior to taking them live. The alternative would have been that you're deploying your CPSDs on a channel that you didn't know was good or bad, and then you would get a request. You would get your request back, and you might either be getting a lower power that you desired, or you have a channel that is creating a lot of interference from the get-go. So this is a way to pre-populate your network configuration, and right when you bring the CPSD on air, you know it's transmitting in a clean spectrum. The alternative obviously would have been a trial and error, which is not very conducive for your business. The other one is the localized interference issues. As I said, sometimes you suspect that there's an issue with your base station or your CPE, and you don't know where it's coming from. And of course, it could be a myriad of different issues, from antennas, from it could be other CPSDs in the areas. It could be just a lot of different things. And one of the things that is new to a lot of us is, well, things change with CBRS. It is a shared spectrum. So you need to do a elimination of issues. And typically a way it's done is you're logging into the portal, you click your CPSDs, that's always calculated what is a good and bad channel, and you can see if you can see that your current channel allocation. You can also see if your current channel allocation is on a good channel or good channels, and if it's not, you can see which channels can I move it onto, away from the bad channel onto another channel that will be better. So you can change your frequency to a better channel that is calculated by our channel guidance, and then you can have your CPSD request for this better channel. So these are two, the new CPSD deployment and helping out with the localizing interference issues and helping to guide your CPSD to a better channel. Those are the two most commonly utilized use cases for coexistence or channel guidance, as we've seen so far.